All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. If you saw the previous video, we retested at 8 feet. So now we're going to basically retest at 9 feet, just so that we can kind of verify if we are getting worse results with this new firmware, then maybe it wasn't a result of the actual 10-foot test that we did a couple of videos ago, and maybe there is just something that is wrong actually with the newest firmware from Voice Caddy. So real quick, just like in the previous videos, we're going to hit 3 pitching wedges, 3 7-irons, 3 drivers. We'll try to hit 2 draws in the beginning and then try to hit a cut or a fade on the third shot of each club. We'll try to get through these as quick as possible, and we'll just kind of quickly review or take a look at, the actual shot shape of each shot, and then we'll get into the data review at the end like we've been doing. So here is shot 1 with the pitching wedge. Contact was a little thin. All right, so both devices actually show the ball starting just left to center and then also have left spin on them. So I would say this shot shape actually would be a match. All right, so here's shot number 2. All right, looking good. I think both start to the left and continue left. All right, so the foresight actually shows that one started exactly straight, but then had that left spin on that draw on it. Here I would say, like, because the SC4 starts left, I'd kind of missed the launch direction a little bit there, and we didn't get as much spin. We probably didn't really get a complete match on shot shape here, so I'd say this was kind of probably fall more into that average category. All right, so for the third and final shot here with the pitching wedge, we're going to try to hit a fade. All right, so on the foresight side, I can already tell that it looks like we did accomplish that. We did hit a fade. So we started it left, spun it back to the right. Whereas on the SC4, it started left like the foresight, but it picked up opposite spin, and it looks like we had a draw. So this would be a complete mismatch on shot check. All right, so now we moved up to 7-iron. So let's hit the first shot with it. Okay, looks kind of like a push draw on both devices, I would say. Yeah, so we started right on both a little bit, and then we also had left spin. So even though the carry number was off about 12 yards, I would say the shot shape was really, really close on that one. Let's hit one more of those. All right, again, I think we've kind of got the same similar kind of shot shape. We start to the right and draw it back to the left. So they're both kind of reading this as a push draw. So I'd say we pretty much, it looks like I would say, matched for the most part on shot 1 and shot 2. Try to hit the fade here on shot number 3. Yeah, and again, it looks like, just like with the pitching wedge, this intentional fade on the third shot is a complete mismatch. So we do have pull fade on the foresight. We did start left on the SC4 like the foresight, but unfortunately it misread the spin and almost flips it and looks like draw spin. So, all right, so we got 2 out of 3, I feel like, on the 7-iron there. We're going to step up and hit 3 drivers now. So here's shot number 1 here. Try to hit a draw. All right, so it looks like they probably both start to the right, and they both show to have some sort of left spin on them. So we just ended up with a much more severe spin axis and spin number on the foresight than what we did with the SC4. All right, so let's hit one more draw here. All right, this one initially is kind of looking like, on ball flight, kind of looking like it's going to match. They both take off to the right. We have very little spin on this shot. Even though the foresight reads it as slightly to the right at 15 R, we've got 24 left on the actual SC4. So really, I think both of these are just kind of labeling this as a pretty straight ball flight. We didn't really draw on this one. So yeah, I would say this one was a match. All right, so we've had those 2. We're going to hit one more, third and final one here. We're going to try to hit basically fade. All right, looks like we accomplished it on the foresight side. So they both do start off to the left. There really wasn't a ton of spin here. We only had 230 to the right on the foresight for that fade, and then we had 56 left on the actual SC4 Pro device here. So yeah, I would think on this one, we're probably going to we're going to label this one as like average, just because we didn't really pick up any kind of fade spin. And I think we had a few hundred revolutions, to the right on the foresight. So I think we should have at least picked up a little bit. All right. So just initially, kind of going through this demo at 9 feet, I do feel like we probably did a lot better than we were at 8 foot. So we're going to jump into the spreadsheet, take a look at the numbers, and compare it against our previous 9 foot test. All right, so if we quickly take a look at the pitching wedge here at the new 9 foot test, it's pretty obvious that we did worse than we did in the original 9 foot test. We ended up with an overall average accuracy score here of 1.92 on these 3 shots, whereas we had that 3.42 in the previous test. And we can quickly look, I think really what killed us here in the new test is the fact that the carry number was just so far off on all 3 shots, where it seemed like we did a pretty good job with pitching wedge in the previous 9 foot test with carry. All right, and then as we move up to 7 iron, we can actually see we got a little bit better here at 9 feet with the 7 iron. So we ended up with a 2.75 overall average accuracy score on the 3 shots versus the 2.58 that we had previously. Now the only thing here is we had one better carry number, so we had a yellow there, and then we also had a pretty decent spin measurement on that second shot as well. So overall, that second shot in this new test measured out to be about a 4.5. So because of that second shot there, where we went yellow, green, 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 we ended up with a 4.5 on that shot. So that really helped bring up the average to where we barely bested our old 9 foot test here. All right, and then as we move on to driver, this one's kind of maybe the more surprising one. We actually did end up with over a 3 for the shot average accuracy score here. So we got a 3.08 between all 3 shots, and that bested the 2.50 that we previously had on the old test at 9 feet. Now, I will say the old test, if you look at that second shot there, that was a really poor shot. That was right across the board, so that really helped bring that average down. Whereas at least in this new test here, I'd say, we did really good with ball speed, did a little bit better on the spin measurement, and then as far as carry and shot shape, maybe about the same or a little bit worse. All right, and then if we directly compare our averages from the old 9 foot test that we did on the old firmware versus the new one with this new firmware, we can see that the overall average for all clubs actually went down, and that's kind of what I felt when we were doing this test. So we got a 2.58 on the new firmware for all of the shots at this 9 foot test, whereas we did have a 2.83 previously on the old firmware at 9 feet. Now, I will say on the new test, we did better, like I said before, on 7 iron and on driver here. It was just crazy that we did so much worse on pitching wedge than what we did on the previous 9 foot test. That really drug the average down on this new test underneath what we had on the old one. And then, so kind of what I was saying, like if we look at our new firmware test versus our old firmware test, unfortunately, I went ahead and updated to the newest firmware before we got to that 10 foot test. So I don't have an original 10 foot test that we did on the old firmware. So if we're just comparing the 8 and the 9 foot here, we've got new firmware on top, old firmware test on the bottom. So with the 8 foot, we can see that we were better on the old firmware, and even on the 9 foot, we can see that we were barely better on the old firmware as well. So I would imagine if we had a 10 foot test with the old firmware, it'd probably work out to be about the same. Hopefully, Voice Caddy can get out another firmware here pretty quickly, better than this new version that they have, the 1.28006 that the device is currently running. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for the video today. I hope you got something out of it, or at least like the content. If you did, make sure to give the video a like. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do so as well. If you are subscribed, we appreciate the support. But however, I did get a couple of new launch monitors, and we are going to start testing those out here on the channel. So be on the lookout for those videos coming up here in the next couple of weeks. All right, I'd like to thank y'all again for watching the video today. Y'all have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.